Well, here I am all alone pushing the cart. Oh, there's a heavy. Hello. Want a grenade? Oh, he's trying to get away. He can't get away. Oh, that was a double kill. Hello everyone, this is Kona, and thank you for tuning in to another TF2 commentary. Now, out of Team Fortress 2's over 120 plus weapons, which is a lot, some of them get the rare privilege of getting buffed. It seems like when you have really OP weapons, it's easier to just nerf them rather than buffing the rest, but sometimes weapons are so underused and others are so overused that it's necessary to buff some in order to make them more appealing to players. I wanted to go over my top 11 weapon buffs in TF2. Why top 11? Well, just like the Nostalgia Critic, I like to go one step beyond. Actually, not really. I had 11 weapons on my list, and I couldn't really figure out which one to knock off, so I'm just gonna include all of them. So, let's get started. Starting with number 11, we have the SCOTSMAN'S Skull Cutter. Now, the SCOTSMAN'S Skull Cutter was released in the second Community Contribution Update in May 2010. This was one of those weapons that remained unchanged for years until Valve decided to change it for some reason. Originally, it gave the demo man plus 20 melee damage, but it slowed your movement speed down by 15% whether you had the weapon out or not. This made the demo man very sluggish. You know, demo men usually like to jump around and actively dodge and stuff, but demo knights rely heavily on their mobility, so this weapon just seemed like a straight downgrade. During Smithsmiths 2014, Valve decided to give it a buff, kind of out of the blue. Now, they probably saw that this weapon wasn't highly equipped by players, so they decided to apply the weapon attribute only when the weapon was actually active. This meant that you could go about and do your regular demo man stuff at full speed, like shooting pipes and stickies, but if you ever got rushed down by someone, or if you really wanted to play aggressive, you could switch to this melee weapon and you'll get a nice plus 20 damage bonus. Now, even though you're a little slower with the Skull Cutter active, it just looks so damn intimidating. I mean, it's kind of like the horseless, headless horseman's head taker. Man, that's a mouthful to say. But yeah, once you get used to meleeing with this weapon with the reduced speed, boy, you can dish out a lot of damage. Okay, at number 10, I have the LETRANGER. Now, the LETRANGER was released in September 2010 in the MacLeod update. Originally, this weapon gave you plus 15 cloak on hit with the minus 20% damage penalty. For many people, regaining cloak wasn't really a good enough reason to use this gun because the damage penalty meant it took longer to kill someone. So even if you managed to land some hits and gain some cloak back, it wouldn't be that useful if you couldn't escape, so you had to be like really good at juking with the Invisawatch, or hopefully you filled up your dead ringer in time to just fake a death. Now, in July 2013, they added a passive plus 40 cloak duration, which made this more attractive for default Invisawatch spies. One of the great things about the Invisawatch is the ability to regain your cloak from ammo packs and dropped weapons. The longer cloak duration allows spies to remain invisible for a little bit longer, and it allows them to reach ammo packs a little bit easier. Now, I know sometimes when I play without the LETRANGER and I'm playing with an Invisawatch, I seem to run out of time before I can get into position to decloak. I guess I feel a little bit rushed, but with the LETRANGER, I don't feel that rushed. I can take my time, make sure I'm in position before I decloak. Now, this buff was probably done in order to compensate for the fact that Valve removed buffs on the Sahara Spy set. They mentioned in a blog post a while back that these buffs from these class sets was kind of unfair, it was affecting gameplay, and so they decided to remove them from the class sets and sort of spread those attributes to the weapons themselves. At number 9, I have the WIDOWMATER. Now, the WIDOWMATER was released in the Nanotechnology bundle, I just call it the Deus Ex promo bundle, in August 2011. At first, this weapon seemed like it was supposed to be good with the no reloading necessary, but the big downside was that it cost 60 metal per shot. This meant that if you missed 3 times, you were basically screwed. Even if you landed a few good shots, you would usually end up with a net loss of metal. Now, it didn't take long for them to realize that metal cost was too high, so just a couple months later, in October 2011, they reduced the metal cost to only 30, which meant that with 200 metal, you can get 6 shots off just like a regular shotgun. Now with this change, it was much easier to keep the weapon up and running and not run out of metal so fast. If you were a decent shot, you would probably break around even, ending up with the same amount of metal as you started with. But if you were really good with it, boy, you could actually gain some metal. Sometimes I actually use the Widowmaker to practice with a shotgun because it basically has the same stats as a shotgun, but with the mechanic of gaining metal on each hit, it really forces you to try and hit someone with it so you don't run out of metal. Next at number 8 is the Reserve Shooter. Now the Reserve Shooter was released during the Uber update in June 2011. Originally, it was part of the airborne armament set for the Soldier, which included the Liberty Launcher and the Market Gardener, and also the Jeepers Jump Cap, the hat. Since only the Soldier could use this shotgun in the beginning, the strategy was to try and pop people up in the air with a rocket launcher, and then finish them off with the Reserve Shooter. This was kind of tough to do. It was more flashy and gimmicky rather than a real effective strategy. I mean, with a rocket launcher, you need so much precision to pop them up predictably in the air just so that you can finish them off, so it really wasn't worth the effort. A few months later, in October 2011, the Reserve Shooter could be equipped by the Pyro, which made a little more sense. Combined with the Degreaser or just anything that could do an air blast, Pyros could set people on fire, and instead of just doing the old puff and sting with the old extinguisher, you could do the puff and shoot with the Reserve Shooter. I don't know what you call that. I'm not really sure what that combo is called. I mean, there's like 2 puff and shoots, right? There's the one with the Reserve Shooter and the one with the flare gun. Anyway, the Reserve Shooter received a major buff in February 2014. The clip size was increased from 3 shots to 4 shots, and the time to mini crit was increased from 3 seconds to 5 seconds. This made it much easier not only for the Pyro to do the old puff and shoot, but if you saw someone that was a little bit jumpy on the other team, you could switch to the Reserve Shooter and you had a whole 5 seconds to mini crit them. I also think it's sort of a peace of mind thing having a little more ammo than before, having 4 shots instead of 3. You're just a little bit closer to having those 6 shots of a regular shotgun. So if you ever need to use this sort of like a regular shotgun, you don't have to go for air shots, but if you ever need to, you can. And number 7 is the Diamondback. Now, the Diamondback was released as a Deus Ex promotional item in August 2011. Similar to the Engineer's Frontier Justice, the Diamondback had the ability to store crits, but only if you managed to destroy buildings with your Sapper. Now, you didn't have to get the kill with the Zapper, but you just had to have your Zapper on the building when it was destroyed in order to get that crit. This was actually a pretty difficult thing to do since this relies heavily on enemy engineers and the amount of buildings that they would build. I'm assuming that they added this mechanic because they wanted the spy to be more of a team player by helping out with sentry nests, but in random pubs, it's really hard to coordinate a big team push with sapping a sentry nest. I mean, that's just kind of how it is, unfortunately. And this meant that the spy was sort of locked into this role of being the counter to the NG if you wanted to use the Diamondback to its fullest potential. Actually, this kind of reminds me of the Spy vs. NG update. Anyway, about 2 years later, in December 2013, they added the ability to store crits by getting backstabs, which is kind of what the spy is known for, right? This meant that you would be rewarded for both helping out destroying enemy buildings, but also for just doing what spies do best, backstabbing people. Now, I'm really glad they made this change, since sometimes there wouldn't be even an enemy engineer to sap, or, engineers, they wouldn't build a lot of buildings. Sometimes those engineers who don't build teleporters or something, yeah, there's less stuff to sap. So, with less opportunities, that meant less crits, but not anymore. Next at number 6 is the Rescue Ranger. Now, the Rescue Ranger was released in the Mecha update in December 2012. Since it was released in the Mecha update, it was probably meant for the more difficult MVM maps. And with the ability to pick up buildings and to repair buildings from a distance, this shotgun seemed to be made for engineers who like to reposition themselves and, save their buildings from dying. It may have been a good weapon for MVM, but in its early days, I didn't see it used all that much in pubs. That is, until they changed some stats. Now, you can't see these changes when you hover over it in your backpack, but essentially they increase the damage of each bolt so that it can sort of be used to kill other players, but not really. But the main buff is the increase in building repair from 50 health to 75 health. When combined with the Wrangler's shield, your sentry gun is really difficult to kill, even from an enemy uber push. I think this was an excellent buff because it now gives NGs another way to play. There's always your traditional turtle NG, which is proving to be ineffective without the proper support from your teammates. You have the no fungineer battle NG with the gunslinger. I know everyone hates fighting against that weapon. And now you have this sort of new style of play, which isn't quite like your traditional turtling. It's more like an active turtling, I guess. I'm not really sure what to call this. It's still a great way to defend a point or something, but it requires more skill than just whacking your building with your wrench. Plus, I'm sure NGs were getting really bored of just using your wrench, so now you can change between, 3 different weapons to keep things interesting. So this was part 1 of my top 11 weapon buffs in TF2. I'm going to be doing the remaining 5 in part 2, so be sure to check that out. So I hope you enjoyed this video, thank you very much for watching, and have a great day.